Hi, I'm Eliza, and today I'm going to talk about the books that I read this winter. Today, the day that I'm filming at least, is officially the first day of spring, so it's a good time to be making this video. So I've got my Goodreads up on my phone, and yeah, let's just dive straight in. So, the first book that I read this winter was The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd, and I'll read the synopsis. It says, set in South Carolina in 1964, The Secret Life of Bees tells the story of Lily Owens, whose life has been shaped around the blurred memory of the afternoon her mother was killed. When Lily's fierce-hearted, black stand-in mother, Rosalind, insults three of the deepest racists in town, Lily decides to spring them both free. They escape to Tiburon, South Carolina, a town that holds the secret to her mother's past. Taken in by an eccentric trio of black beekeeping sisters, Lily is introduced to their mesmerizing world of bees and honey and the Black Madonna. This is a remarkable novel about divine female power, a story women will share and pass on to their daughters for years to come. So I gave this book 3 stars. It was a little bit slow for me, especially at the beginning. It took me a while to get into, and in the end it's a very sweet story. It's a coming of age story, but I didn't find it didn't stick with me. I didn't find it groundbreaking or life-changing, and I found it a bit forgettable, to be honest. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but it was a 3-star book for me. I actually got this book. I had a few hours to kill in a cafe, like in the center of town, one day for some reason, and I saw this book for £1 in a charity shop, and I had recognized it. I'm not sure if someone has recommended it to me before or if I've seen it recommended before, but it did the job of filling a few hours at least. So that was The Secret Life of Bees. The next book I read was called Before the Coffee Gets Cold by, I should have looked up how to say this person's name before I started recording, but by Toshikazu Kawaguchi and translated by Jeffrey Trusilot. I've said both of those names wrong, I'm sure, but the book is called Before the Coffee Gets Cold. It was originally in Japanese and translated to English. I'll read the synopsis. It says, what would you change if you could go back in time? In a small back alley in Tokyo, there is a cafe which has been serving carefully brewed coffee for more than 100 years. But this coffee shop offers its customers a unique experience, the chance to travel back in time. In Before the Coffee Gets Cold, we meet 4 visitors, each of whom is hoping to make use of the cafe's time-traveling offer in order to confront the man who left them, receive a letter from their husband whose memory has been taken by early-onset Alzheimer's, to see their sister one last time, and to meet the daughter they never got the chance to know. But the journey into the past does not come without risks. Customers must sit in a particular seat, they cannot leave the cafe, and finally they must return to the present before the coffee gets cold. Toshikazu Kawaguchi's beautiful, moving story explores the age-old question, what would you change if you could travel back in time? More importantly, who would you want to meet, maybe for one last time? So I gave this book 2 stars, but I actually might even want to give it 1 star, giving 1 star seems too harsh, but I really didn't enjoy this book at all. I really liked the sound of the premise, this coffee shop where people can go back in time, and I really enjoyed that idea, but the stories themselves I didn't enjoy. I also found it very slow. The rules about traveling back in time that we get in the synopsis, that the customers must sit in a particular seat, they cannot leave the cafe, and they must return to the present before the coffee gets cold. We read all that in the synopsis, and then it's repeated about 100 million trillion times throughout the book. And the stories themselves I didn't find engaging or enjoyable. I didn't enjoy the characters, and the stories all seemed very conservative. To me, they were very much about, it was very kind of heteronormative. The first story is about a woman whose boyfriend leaves her, and she goes back in time to try to save their relationship, and all of the stories just seemed very kind of heteronormative. So I didn't enjoy this. I didn't enjoy this book. And I think there's several books by the same author. It says there's also Tales from the Cafe, Before Your Memory Fades, Before We Say Goodbye. I don't know if these are more stories set in the same coffee shop. Yeah, I know some people have really enjoyed this book. If you have really enjoyed this book, I'd be interested in hearing why, because for me, I was surprised that it's so popular. That being said, it does have a 3.7 average rating on Goodreads, so clearly lots of people didn't enjoy it as well. But anyway, that was Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and I listened to the audiobook of that on Spotify. The next book that I read was Babel by R.F. Kuang, and I'll read the synopsis. It says, from award-winning author R.F. Kuang comes Babel, a historical fantasy epic that grapples with student revolutions, colonial resistance, and the use of language and translation as the dominating tool of the British Empire. Traduttore, traditore, an act of translation is always an act of betrayal. In 1828, Robin Swift, orphaned by cholera in Canton, is brought to London by the mysterious Professor Lavelle. There, he trains for years in Latin, ancient Greek, and Chinese, all in preparation for the day he'll enroll at Oxford University's prestigious Royal Institute of Translation, also known as Babel. The tower and its students are the world's centre for translation and, more importantly, magic. Silverworking, the art of manifesting the meaning lost in translation using enchanted silver bars, has made the British unparalleled in power as the arcane craft serves the Empire's quest for colonialization. For Robin, Oxford is a utopia dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge. But knowledge obeys power, and as a Chinese boy raised in Britain, Robin realizes serving Babel means betraying his motherland. As his studies progress, Robin finds himself caught between Babel and the shadowy Hermes Society, an organization dedicated to stopping imperial expansion. When Britain pursues an unjust war with China over silver and opium, Robin must decide. Can powerful institutions be changed from within, or does revolution always require violence? I gave this book 3 stars, and this was a really hard one for me because I was sure that I was going to love this book, and I really thought that it was going to be one of my all-time favorites. It's about translation and academia, and I studied languages and translation at university, so it's a special interest of mine, and I did really enjoy all of the things about linguistics, and the magic system is based on translation and what is lost in translation, and I thought that was really cool as a kind of language nerd kind of person. I really enjoyed aspects of that. The things that I didn't like about it, I also found it very slow. Not a lot happens until kind of the last 100 pages. I also found the character development quite weak, so by the time we get to the action in the last couple of 100 pages, I didn't really care what happened to any of the characters. The book does a very good job of criticizing academia and elitism and how it links to colonialism, and that's a really important discussion, but I also found it very kind of force-fed. Every page is just like, colonialism is bad, and yes, obviously colonialism is bad, but there was a little bit of, I think there was some nuance lacking. I think the white male professors, they could be interchanged, like they didn't have any defining character traits apart from being racist, and yeah, overall it felt a little bit flat. Also, so it's an alternate past where there's magic, but the magic hasn't changed anything in the world, so I found that unrealistic. Overall, I found the story just quite boring, really, up until the end, but like I said, I wasn't invested enough in the characters to really care, so that was why I didn't enjoy it. Yeah, I felt it was a hard one for me because I really wanted to love it, but I didn't. So the next book I read was Wayward by Amelia Hart, and this book, it says, I am wayward and wild inside. 2019. Under cover of darkness, Kate flees London for a ramshackle wayward cottage inherited from a great aunt she barely remembers. With its tumbling ivy and overgrown garden, the cottage is worlds away from the abusive partner who tormented Kate, but she begins to suspect that her great aunt had a secret, one that lurks in the bones of the cottage, hidden ever since the witch hunts of the 17th century. 1619. Altha is awaiting trial for the murder of a local farmer who was stampeded to death by his herd. As a girl, Altha's mother taught her their magic, a kind not rooted in spellcasting, but in a deep knowledge of the natural world. But unusual women have always been deemed dangerous, and as the evidence for witchcraft is set out against Altha, she knows it will take all of her powers to maintain her freedom. 1942. As World War II rages, Violet is trapped in her family's grand, crumbling estate. Straitjacketed by societal convention, she longs for the robust education her brother receives, and for her mother, long deceased, who was rumoured to have gone mad before her death. The only traces Violet has of her are a locket bearing the initial W, and the word Wayward scratched into the baseboard of her bedroom. Weaving together the stories of three extraordinary women across 5 centuries, Amelia Hart's Wayward is an enthralling novel of female resilience and the transformative power of the natural world. I gave this book 3 stars, although actually maybe I want to change that to 4 stars, because I definitely enjoyed it a lot more than I enjoyed Babel. This book was just exactly what I needed after having read Babel and Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which were both real slogs for me. Wayward was just exactly what I needed. It is gripping, it's very atmospheric, it's very kind of gothic, and I really enjoyed the dark nature themes, and it is also just a really gripping story. There are things about it which annoyed me, some of the decisions that the characters made. I didn't love, and I will also say that there is a lot of violence against women in this book, which not everyone might want to read about. So just a heads up for that if you are thinking about reading it. But overall, I read this book in like 2 days and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I'm going to change my rating to 4 stars because I think 3 was a bit harsh. So the next book that I read was called Art Matters Because Imagination Can Change the World, and it's by Neil Gaiman. And it says, a stunning and timely creative call to arms combining 4 extraordinary written pieces by Neil Gaiman. The world always seems brighter when you've just made something that wasn't there before. Neil Gaiman. Drawn from Gaiman's trove of published speeches, poems, and creative manifestos, Art Matters is an embodiment of this remarkable multimedia artist's vision, an exploration of how reading, imagining, and creating can transform the world and our lives. Art Matters brings together 4 of Gaiman's most beloved writings on creativity and artistry. Number 1, Credo, his remarkably concise and relevant manifesto on free expression, first delivered in the wake of the Charlie Hebdo shootings. Number 2, Make Good Art, his famous 2012 commencement address delivered at the Philadelphia University of the Arts. Number 3, Making a Chair, a poem about the joys of creating something even when the words won't come. Number 4, On Libraries, an impassioned argument for libraries that illuminates their importance to our future and celebrates how they foster readers and daydreamers. Art Matters is a stirring testament to the freedom of ideas that inspire us to make art in the face of adversity and dares us to choose to be bold. So I listened to this book, I listened to the audiobook of this on Spotify. Spotify now do, in case you didn't know, they do some audiobooks included with premium. If you have a one-person premium account, or if you are the manager, like the lead account on a family account. So I think it's like 15 hours of free audiobooks a month or something like that. And this book is very short. It was only about an hour or 2 long to listen to. And like it says, it is a collection of essays and speeches, and it's narrated by Neil Gaiman himself, which is really nice to listen to. I really enjoyed hearing his voice, speaking his own words, and I found it very inspiring. I think that this book will inspire you to create more. I think it'll inspire you to read more, and it really inspired me to use my library more, because I always take my library for granted. Having finished university, I associate the library with scary studying and serious books, and I forget that you can also just take good, fun fiction books out of the library for free. So yeah, I gave this book 4 stars, and I really enjoyed it. It's a very quick read, so it's very easy to get through. The next book that I read, I actually listened to this one as well on Spotify. It is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. It says, teeming with life and crackling with energy, a love song to modern Britain and black womanhood. Girl, Woman, Other follows the lives and struggles of 12 very different characters, mostly women, black and British. They tell the stories of their families, friends and lovers across the country and through the years. Joyfully polyphonic and vibrantly contemporary, this is a gloriously new kind of history, a novel of our times, celebratory, ever dynamic, and utterly irresistible. I gave this book 4 stars. So I have a funny story about listening to this book on Spotify. So I started listening to this book and I was enjoying it, but I found it very difficult to keep track of who was who because it was flitting between different characters and different timelines, and I couldn't always work out who was speaking. And I listened to it for a few hours like this before I realized that Spotify was playing the chapters essentially on shuffle. So I had been listening to the chapters of the book out of order. And then once I realized that that was what I was doing, then I started listening to it in order, and then it wasn't hard to follow. It's very easy to follow. So that wasn't the intended experience of the book, but then I listened to it properly and I really enjoyed it. You get different insights into different characters, and each chapter is like a case study on a different character, and then at the end then the characters kind of link together in a way like Love Actually. So I really enjoyed it. I think this book could have been like 200 pages shorter for me. It felt very long, but I really enjoyed the way it was written, and I enjoyed the way that it was read, the way that it was narrated as well. It really felt like being told a story. It feels like folktales almost, and yeah, I really enjoyed that. I think it's true what they say, a gloriously new kind of history, celebratory, ever dynamic, and utterly irresistible. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot, but I could have had 1 or 2. It could have been a little bit shorter for me. The next book that I read was The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker, and I read this book because it is one of ASMR Veda's favourite books, and she sent this to me for Christmas. We did a book swap. I sent her Where the Crawdads Sing, which is one of my favourite books, and she sent me The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker. It says, so that was all it took. I thought that was all it took for me to feel like I had all the power in the world. One morning, one moment, one yellow-haired boy. It wasn't so much after all. Meet Chrissy. Chrissy is 8 and she has a secret. She has just killed a boy. The feeling made her belly fizz like soda pop. Her playmates are tearful and their mothers are terrified, keeping them locked indoors. But Chrissy rules the roost. She's the best at wall walking, she knows how to get free candy, and now she has a feeling of power that she never gets at home, where food is scarce and attention scarcer. 20 years later, adult Chrissy is living in hiding under a changed name. A single mother, all she wants is for her daughter to have the childhood she herself was denied. That's why the threatening phone calls are so terrifying. People are looking for them, the past is catching up, and Chrissy fears losing the only thing in the world she cares about, her child. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I devoured this book as well. I read it in just a few days. So the book begins with Chrissy as an 8-year-old girl killing a young boy. I think the boy is 2. And then the story flits between 8-year-old Chrissy and adult Chrissy. And I think especially the 8-year-old Chrissy bits were so well written that they really make you feel like you're in the brain of this 8-year-old child and not really understanding life and death, not really understanding consequences. I thought it was very well done. And what else was I gonna say? Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And there is like a lot of violence. While there is violence in the book, there is neglect and some child abuse, I would say. So bear that in mind if you're thinking about reading it. But overall, I found it very touching. It's also, at times, it can be really funny. I think it does a very good job of blending this kind of humour with the very dark and serious and sad topics. It's also very sad. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. That was the first Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker. And then the last book that I read was A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. It says number 3.5 in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. I won't read the description because it will be a spoiler if you haven't started the series, but I gave this book 1 star, and I just don't think this book is really worth reading. I think that you could just read the 3rd book and then go straight to the last one. This book, it just felt like it's just 250 pages of Feyre being like, what should I get my husband for Christmas? And nothing else happening. There is no plot, and without the plot, then you're just kind of left with the rubbish characters and the rubbish world building. Yeah, I don't like being reminded of how the world that Sarah J. Maas created in A Court of Thorns and Roses just really sucks. And I don't know why. It's a fantasy, so why is there classism, and why is there so much misogyny, and why do women get awful periods? Like, Sarah didn't need to put this in the book. So yeah, I didn't enjoy it, but I think that if you've just finished reading the 3rd one, I can't remember the names of them, but if you just finished reading it and you're like, oh my gosh, I need more to read, then you could read this. It's been a while since I read the previous book, so I was disappointed that nothing happens in this one. But anyway, that's on me. I probably should have read the synopsis and the reviews more thoroughly. Anyway, so those are all of the books that I've read recently. Let me know if you have read any of these, and if you agree or disagree with me. Let me know if you have any book recommendations for me. And yeah, thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I'll see you soon.